Annunciation Radio presents Faith Alive, highlighting the many ways Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Toledo provides love and support for those in need. And now, your host for Faith Alive, Executive Director of Catholic Charities in Toledo, Rodney Schuster.
Hello and welcome to Faith Alive. I'm your host, Rodney Schuster, Executive Director for Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Toledo. I am very blessed to share two programs with you, Phase 1 and Phase 2, of Brad Pierron, who's the Director of Mission Awareness from Damascus Ministries. He was a speaker at our Catholic Business Network meeting on February 5th. So enjoy. This is Phase 1. Next week, join us for Phase 2. Take care and God bless.
So it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Mr. Brad Pierron. Brad's the Director of Mission Awareness at Damascus, headquartered in Columbus area. Damascus is a Catholic apostolate focused on leading people, and especially young people, young adults, into a life-changing encounter with Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit and sending them out on mission. Brad brings that same Spirit-led vision into the workplace, helping professionals see their work as holy ground. Brad will be speaking today on the power of the Spirit-led workplace. So let's give a rousing Catholic Business Network welcome to Mr. Brad Pierron.
What a gift to be with you guys this morning. It's a real joy. I was actually driving up this morning, in a 2-hour truck drive in the early morning without music on gives you a lot of time to think. And as I was getting excited for the presentation here, I was thinking about the last couple weeks in my life. And my wife and I wanted to be here with you, but really just to be here with my feet on the ground. About 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were tasked with giving a presentation at Arizona State University. So we brought our little 2-year-old daughter, Eliza, with us. And when we got down there on a Wednesday, almost 2 weeks ago exactly. And when we got down there, we got everything in order, went and gave a presentation on Wednesday night, felt great about it. Her brother is a missionary at Arizona State with St. Paul's Outreach, and so we were excited to spend a long weekend with a relative who's been out of the state for a long time. And little did we know that there was a snowstorm coming through Ohio. And so we had our flight out on Sunday, feeling good, a little 5-day Arizona trip, and it got to about Friday, and we got a message that, hey, your Sunday flight's canceled. Great, Sunday flight canceled, that's easy. We can move it up to Saturday. We have a toddler. We'll get in the air early. So we changed to the direct flight on Saturday, and we get to Saturday morning, having a great time. And I get a message on my phone from Southwest letting me know that now the Saturday flight had been canceled, and everything out of Sky Harbor, which is in Phoenix, I get to fly a bit, was going to be canceled for the rest of the day. And so I'm like, okay, well, we'll just move to Monday. But then I thought, oh, wait, everybody that was on Sunday who didn't have a toddler probably moved to Monday. And so then we tried to move to Monday. All the flights were booked. We moved to Tuesday, came back, and then I traveled to Cleveland and back. And then we had some things going on at Damascus where we had the Catholic camp leaders from around the country for a conference. And I was just laughing about it because what brings it to kind of culmination is this week we had a staff appreciation time at Damascus where we celebrated some milestones in different missionaries' lives. And I've been at Damascus for 10 years now, which is somewhat unbelievable. I'm just a really simple guy from Southern Ohio, grew up in Portsmouth, born and raised, pretty entrepreneurial family. My grandpa was a dentist and owned like 4 or 5 businesses as I was growing up. My dad was a pharmacist, did the same thing. I was the first one on my mom's side to get a 4-year degree. I went to Ohio State on an academic scholarship, was studying pre-law there, excited for law school at a place like Notre Dame, because my dad's side of the family, all Notre Dame fans, mom's side of the family, all Ohio State fans. If you can do undergrad and graduate school, satisfy the whole family, then move home, you'll have a decent amount of options when you come home, you know? And I say that because the last 2 weeks have been really different for me. And in reflecting on Monday when they did the honoring for the people that had been there for 10 years, we started with 7 missionaries 10 years ago. We now have over 150 full-time employees at Damascus. And I was just thinking about how different my life is than I expected it to be. And I was really grateful in one sense, and I was really reflective in another sense. And I was thinking about it when I was driving up here even this morning, that there's something about when things in our life are different, we notice. And if there's one thing that I get to do as a guy who like walks with a ton of young adults who are trying to discover what they want to do with their lives, there's something about reflecting on the things that we take for granted. Like we take for granted that like things are different. Like when I got home from Arizona, there was 15 inches of snow on my driveway, and that was different because I'm from Ohio, not Minnesota. And I traveled to Minnesota some, but I needed to shovel the snow off. And then when I got back in, I had forgotten what I left the house like. And so I get back in the house and it's different than I expected. And there's something about us in our human experience that recognize when things are different. And I think the reason that we recognize when things are different is that we were made for things to be different. If there's one thing that's true about Jesus Christ, it's that he was very different than expected. And even today, we notice those little nuances, the things that make things different. And I think that the reason that we are so consistently observant of the thing that is different is because we were made to recognize that God is different, and what he wants to do in your life and mine and in your business and in our organization is different. I'm not going to bore you with the Jewish education system at Jesus' time, but effectively there was 3 levels of education when Jesus was coming of age. Bet Sefer, Bet Talmud, Bet Midrash. I won't ask you that later. Effectively elementary school, middle school, high school. And the way that it would work is to go through Bet Sefer, it would usually be around the age of 10 to 12. You would begin memorizing the Pentateuch, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. At the end of that time, you would have an exam where the top 10% of people who had been able to memorize it well enough would then move on to Bet Talmud. And then in Bet Talmud, you would begin memorizing the entirety of the Old Testament as we know it, as they would have known it, the prophets and the Torah. And then after you would memorize that sufficiently for a couple years, you would then be asked a bunch of questions and examined, and then the top 10% of that would move on to Bet Midrash, Bet Talmud, Bet Sefer, Bet Talmud, Bet Midrash. Sorry, I'm getting them all the bets are getting just mixed in my mind. And when you would make it to that level of education, what would happen is you would spend the time like perfecting all the things that you had studied. I wonder how many of us are still trying to perfect the things that we studied, you know? And for about 2 years, you'd do that, and then you would go and you would find what they called at the time a rabbi, and you would look to the rabbi and you would say, could I follow you? And the rabbi would look back at you and grill you with questions, and then after you answered sufficiently, he would say, come follow me, to which you would respond, let your dust be upon me. The reason Jesus is so different, right, is because we come to really know Jesus when he's about 30. But what's crazy is at 30 years old, he's already a rabbi. So what that means is he went through all 3 levels of education, but then was humble enough not to go and find a different rabbi, but to do what everybody else did that didn't make it to the next level of education, which is to go home and learn your father's trade. There's a real humility in Jesus. That everyone was looking at like the Messiah. The reason that he was so overlooked was because the Messiah was going to be something that like took over, not something that humbly served. And what's even more amazing about Jesus is that like these ordinary fishermen that are on the seashore, they see a rabbi coming to them. They're not going and asking a rabbi to follow them. They're seeing a rabbi come to the seashore, which makes them think, who is this man? Like this isn't how it goes. Rabbis don't come to the seashore. The people that make the cut go to the rabbi. You can probably see what I'm saying. It's just that Jesus is so different, and sometimes it's so right in front of us that we miss it. But the reason it's so important for us as business leaders, organization leaders, nonprofit leaders, to recognize that Jesus was so different is to in fact ask ourselves, how different do the organizations, the businesses, and every other thing that we're involved in look different to the other things that are available in the world? It was when I was in college, I say the 2 most important days in a Catholic's life is the day they're baptized and the day they find out why. It just took me 20 years to find out why. And before I had kind of my conversion in college, I went back to one of the smartest men that I've ever met. Pray for him. His name's Derek. I still text him on his birthday. He's in a process, doesn't follow the Lord, but a good man, a brilliant man. Studied neuroscience, and I was studying communications. That shows you the difference in the intellectual ability of he and I. And I came home from church one Sunday, and when I came back from church, Derek's sitting there, and he is playing FIFA, just to give you the image. There's soccer being played on a video game on the screen. I walk in, he pauses the game, and he looks at me, and he says, Brad, why do you keep doing this? And I said, doing what? I said, why do you keep going to church? Like you do everything that we do, and then you just go to church on Sunday. And I looked at him, I'm like, because I think it's right, and I think there's something there. And I didn't even know if I agreed with what I was saying to him. But what was crazy to me is Derek looked back at me and he said, you know why I don't think I'll ever believe what you believe? And I said, tell me. And Derek said, you're Catholic, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, in Catholics, they believe that when they go to church, the real presence of Jesus is there. I said, yeah. And he said, kind of like the center of what you guys do is receive Jesus so you can be Jesus to the world. I said, yeah. He goes, the reason I'll never believe what you're saying is because I've never seen someone enter that building and leave different. And you know, like 19-year-old me is just like, I think he's right. My life's been really different because I spend a lot of time with middle schoolers and high schoolers. I said yes to what was like a blank slate with real high hopes that God might be able to do something on 471 acres of farm and forest in Centerburg, Ohio, you know? Most of my time was spent as a founding missionary and an architect of our missionary program, so I work with college students and young adults a lot. And we've gone from, like I said, 7 full-time employees to 150 in 10 years. We've gone from serving 1,000 young people to 20,000 young people. We've gone from 30 summer missionaries to 400 in 3 different states. And as we've grown, what I've realized, asked to give a present, the thing that made us different at the beginning is the thing that I hope still makes us different now. And when I was asked to give a presentation here to you all, which I was so honored to give, I wanted to call it the power of the Spirit-led workplace. And what I wanted to do at the beginning was to give you evidence for why it matters that we are different in the workplaces that we go into. The reason it matters for our workplace is to be different than what you would see in others. And not because we're better or holier than thou, but because the world deserves to see something different. If there's one thing the incarnation shows us, it's that the world deserves to see something different. If the Catholic Church was who she was called to be to the world, they would see it as different, not just something that goes through the motions. And when I'm thinking about the power of the Spirit-led workplace, the power of the Spirit-led workplace is in fact that it's different. And I want to talk about 5 marks of a Spirit-led workplace today, and I want to use the acronym POWER, P-O-W-E-R, okay? So first, the power of the Spirit-led workplace is that it's different. How is it different in the first sense? It's different in prayer. And prayer comes in 3 forms in a workplace, in an organization like mine, a Catholic apostolate, in a business like so many of the businesses that are run in Columbus that I have a good fortune of knowing the leaders of. And prayer can come in these 3 forms. First, prayer is for connection. Second is it's for direction. And third, it's for evangelization. First, prayer for connection. I don't know where you're at in your organization or company, and I don't know how available these different things will be to you. It's hard because something can't always be universally applicable, but the principle can be. Like prayer for connection, some companies, some organizations, they begin meetings with prayer. And they do it in a way that's most appropriate to the environment they're in, right? Like sometimes I'm in largely Protestant environments. I'll do the sign of the cross, but won't externalize it verbally. That gives them the understanding that this is in fact who I am, but I want to join in care because this is what we're doing. That connection, because it connects us to God and it connects us to one another. Some people, and I've admired this, that are in the business realm can't begin meetings with prayer just because of where they're at in their company, where they're at in their growth. They end their meetings with their direct reports. First of all, 3 good questions to a direct report, right? How are you? How are your people/projects? How can I help? Those are pretty good, right? And then at the end of that touch point with their direct report, anything I can pray for you over the next week or 2. Connection. Even if they say no, right? Like I travel a lot anymore, so I talk a lot to like airport attendants and gas station attendants. And one of the commitments I've made in my life is I pray for them when I'm in there. And I just go up and I just ask if there's anything I can pray for, or if the Lord has given me something, I just say, hey, one of the commitments I've made is that I pray for the people that serve me. And I just wanted to share with you that I felt like this is what the Lord was saying. And sometimes they're like, that doesn't resonate. Well, great, just know I was praying for you, you know? And sometimes it does, but what happens is all of a sudden connection's happening because prayer brings connection. The other thing is it brings direction. If you're a point leader in your organization or your business, like don't do it alone. Like we weren't made to lead on our own. We were made to lead in following him, right? Let your dust be upon me, Jesus. I want to lead like you lead. I want to run Damascus like you run Damascus. I want to run my company like you would run my company. I want to run my family like you would run my family. Direction. Okay, Lord, we're at a fork in the road. Yogi Berra once said that when you come to a fork in the road, take it, you know? I like that audacity. Also, take it with prayer. And last, evangelization. The prayer can be evangelizing. Have you ever been in an environment, I'm at college campuses a lot, and just to pray before a meal, the amount of conversations I've had in lunchroom environments at college campuses, just because I pray with the person I'm meeting with before the meal. Like, Brad, we've always thought there was something a little bit different about you. I think we're kind of now on to you. Evangelization, euangelion, like evangelization means bringer of good news, the bringing of the good news of Jesus Christ. And the good news is brought sometimes just by like, there's more to life than the circumstance you're in. And that can be as simple as a sign of the cross. Another woman that runs a business in the Columbus area who's a good friend of the ministry at Damascus, she runs an amazing salon. Like she employs like tens, if not hundreds over the last 5 years of like people from all different backgrounds and influences and preferences. And she just plays praise and worship music the entire day at the salon. She gets there at 3 a.m. when some of her clients get there between 3 and 7. And she plays it all the way until the last client leaves around 7 or 8. Because that's the environment she's setting. Is an environment of prayer that says there's good news. You're not stuck in the circumstance that you're in. Second, prayer, that's the P in power. Next is O, order of priority. And this is like in every business book, right? But like when our motive moves from profit to something more meaningful, all of a sudden profit has something to serve. Think about it like this. If my motive is profit, but I can make that subservient to my motive being impact, well, now all of a sudden there's a lot of things that go alongside profit. Profit's there with impact because it allows me to go further faster. But another thing that drives impact is healthy families. Another thing that drives impact is humane resourcing. Another thing that drives impact is the ability to keep employees who might be in a situation in life where they're not able to give me the hours they used to, but we want to be loyal to them because it matters, because connection matters. This reordering of priorities, one of my favorite shows from like 5 years ago, I don't get to watch it as much anymore, but was Shark Tank. And there was this famous Shark Tank episode where a guy by the name of Jeffrey Georges, he invented something called the, I forget exactly what it was called, but it was like the plant TP. Okay, and effectively, this was just a good old farmer boy from Midwest Ohio who developed a technology that was a little TP that you put around the like base of trees or other crops so that you could harvest more. And he's presenting it on Shark Tank, and he talks about where he has his margins at and where he has the price point at. And the sharks look at him, they're like, you should double that price. Like you're living off like you're selling an unbelievable quantity for thin margins, just double the price, and this could go to the moon. He goes, but it's farmers. But it's farmers. Like what a line. Because he knew the impact he wanted to have. And he knew profit would drive it. And what's crazy is all the sharks were out at that point, and one shark at the end is like, I like you. A man that can stand on principle. A man that's not just blown around by the wind of the time. Like, I like you. I'll invest in this business. I'll give you exactly what you're looking for. They shake hands, and now, I wish I could remember the name of it. I researched it right before I took off this morning, and I forgot it. But order of priority, right? That's the O in power. W, willingness to serve. First said yes to the willingness to serve. Like the Spirit-led workplace has a willingness to serve. It's funny because when I first said yes to Damascus, I'm like, we're going to change the world. And it's funny because everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to do the dishes, you know? And so I'm at Damascus, and I'm like, we're changing the world. There's 10 kids coming today, you know? Oh wait, there's no kids coming this week. Okay, what are we going to do? You're going to take butter knives and clean out the concrete cracks. Okay, changing the world. What I'm not saying is that we should throw KRAs out the window. What I'm not saying is that we should just have everybody do everybody else's job so that everybody gets burnt out. What I am saying, though, is a willingness to serve, a willingness to look at the other and say, like, I think the best analogy for this, I worked for Ohio State's football team a little bit in college, and a football analogy for this is when you have a really, really talented defensive player, and bear with me if you don't like sports at all, it'll still connect, I promise. If you have a really, really talented defensive player, the first thing you have to stress to them is assignment. Assignment, assignment, assignment. If you have outside contain, no one gets outside of you, okay? So no fast running back, for those of you who don't know football as much, should run around you to the sideline. Like you have outside contain. But once they know their assignment and they're disciplined in their assignment, what they can begin doing is twofold. They can begin understanding the play. They can understand how the things are operating, not just the thing. They become owners, not renters, right? It's no longer just I'm doing the one thing that I need to do here. It's now kind of like I'm seeing the greater picture. And when you have a really good defensive end who has outside contain, when they begin realizing that they have outside contain, but they need to scrape down and make a play in the gap, they can do that. Okay, this is all of a sudden a willingness to serve. That wasn't his assignment. It might have been someone else's, but had he not made the play, that other person might not have been in the place to make the play, which would have blown their assignment, if you can follow. And then last, it's not just knowing your assignment, and it's not just knowing the play, but all of a sudden then, it really is a willingness to serve. That when that defensive end now knows his assignment, knows he can scrape down, but sees a person that's pulling from the opposite side, which just means a big lineman running at you, right? Like he can actually take on 2 blocks, take that, allow the linebacker to scrape and make a play. What begins happening is a willingness to serve comes from the order and structure that I'm sure so many of you are so committed to in your organization. Get people that come in, they begin owning their assignment, they recognize their assignment, and then the first move they make after they understand it is, how can I serve? What more needs done? How can I help? At Damascus, we have 5 missionary mindsets. They're effectively our core values. We're Jesus-centered, mission-focused, joy-filled, obedient, toilet plungers. That's because we work with middle schoolers. But toilet plunger is my favorite missionary mindset, and it's because we're not afraid to get in the mess. And here's the reality. We work with people. People are messy. It's messy to have reconciling conversations. It's messy as a point leader to take accountability whenever I mess up. And it's also messy to fill my pockets with trash on our 471 acres. But I can't tell you how many people that visit Damascus when they're with a missionary, and I've told them this, and they walk with them and see that missionary picking up every piece of trash they see and filling their pockets. They look at me and they go, that toilet plunger thing, oh, it's a willingness to serve. This isn't Brad's. This is ours. And it's a gift. One of my favorite stories is when the John F. Kennedy space station was open. JFK is down in the space station, and there's a person with a dust mop in the hallway. And as the dust mop is moving back and forth in the hallway, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, is coming down the hallway, right? And the janitorial guy, as he's dust mopping, looks up, sees that it's the President of the United States. Pretty crazy moment, right? Puts the dust mop up against the wall. As John F. Kennedy approaches the person who's dust mopping the hallway, John F. Kennedy comes up and he introduces himself, and I'm John F. Kennedy. And the guy with the mop introduces himself, and JFK looks him in the eye and he says, "Sir, what is it that you do here?" And the man looks at the mop, looks at John F. Kennedy, looks back at the mop, looks back at John F. Kennedy and says, "Sir, I help launch rockets." That's a willingness to serve. I know the vision. We launch rockets. And rockets wouldn't launch the way they can if I didn't do my part. And if I wasn't willing to get low. Like Jesus, the greatest leader of all time, got low. He washed the feet of the ones that he loved. He never asked someone to follow him to do something he wouldn't do. A willingness to serve. Starts from the top, moves its way down. Prayer, order of priorities, willingness to serve. The E is egolessness. Egolessness. Jesus could have used any 2 attributes to describe himself. And what he does in Matthew 28 is he uses exactly 2 attributes to define himself. I actually think it might be Matthew 20. Matthew 28 is the commissioning. But he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am," and then he gives the 2 attributes that he ascribes to himself. We can call him so many things, so many characteristics of his are things that we should adopt in our lives, but these are the 2 that he uses to tell the world how he sees his call and who he should be. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." Meek and humble of heart. Okay, meekness. This was a word that I really wrestled with until a little bit into my conversion, actually. And I looked up the etymology because I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to words. And the etymology for meekness, it most directly translates to someone who has a sword, knows how to use it, but keeps it sheathed anyway. Like, you never have to know who the strongest person in the gym is. Like, you don't have to wonder who the smartest person at the table is. They don't have to flaunt it. No real samurai swings his sword around. Meekness is power under control. It's a tempered heart. It's a recognition that everything that I've given has been a gift and I'm grateful for it and I'll steward it appropriately with the right heart. Humility. Humility and humiliation, same derivative, right? Same thing as human, hummus. Any fans of hummus? I'm from Portsmouth, Ohio, so I didn't even know what hummus was until I married my wife, whose mom's off the boat from Italy. But it doesn't matter. I didn't know. But hummus comes from the ground. Human comes from the ground, right? And then the breath of life's breathed into the nostrils of humankind. Humility, humiliation, same exact root. What's the difference between humility and humiliation? Humiliation is when someone forces you to the ground. Humility is when you lay down freely. Jesus says, my Father loves me because no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down freely. In Sirach, it says that the worthy man is processed, is refined in the crucible of humiliation. What does that mean? It's because, man, the more I'm forced to the ground, the more I'm like, no, I'm just called to be a foundation stone. Franciscan University, I have my MBA through that university, and I was so struck the first time I went there. It's in Steubenville on the eastern side of the state. And one of the things that really just struck me is that they believed what they said, you know? It's like, whoa. Like, we can say a lot. In this age, we have more information than ever, but they believed what they said, and they were talking about an expansion they had in Austria. It's in a place called Gaming. It's where people can study abroad when they go to the university there.
Thank you for listening to part one of Brad Pierron's presentation at the Catholic Business Network meeting on February 5th. Join us next week to join part two on Faith Alive. Thanks so much, and God bless.
You've been listening to Faith Alive with Rodney Schuster. For more information about Catholic Charities programs and services, visit CatholicCharitiesNWO.org. You can listen to this and other episodes anytime on demand on the Annunciation Radio mobile app and at AnnunciationRadio.com.